Hey friends, welcome to the Taste Toast Travel Podcast. We're your hosts and resident foodies, Epicureans, and lovers of all things travel and exploration.
I'm John, and I'm a certified somm and a certified specialist of wine, and I've worked in the wine and hospitality industry for over 10 years.
I'm Tara, and I've worked in the wine industry for over 7 years, both in hospitality and digital marketing.
When my wife and I first met, we bonded over our love of eating, drinking, and traveling the world. That passion has only grown over time. Now we want to share this passion with you from an insider perspective. We're only scratching the surface here, and we have a lot more in store that we can't wait to share with you all. Grab your favorite beverage, get comfortable, and enjoy the journey with us. Cheers.
Andrea, welcome to the Taste Toast Travel Podcast. I am really excited to dig into this conversation with you as we both, it sounds like, work in the wine industry, but two very different industries. And you are sort of a specialist, an expert, if you will, on Turkish wine, which I personally don't know much. I'm going to say I don't know much about it. I don't know anything about it, really. Admittedly, I'm definitely a California wine girl in terms of my knowledge. My husband, who's the co-host of this podcast, he's not here right now, is a sommelier, so he probably knows a little bit more. But I feel like it's one of those countries, those wine countries, regions, if you will, that is not talked about as often, right? You hear a lot about, the United States and France and Italy and all of that. I feel like those are the more common ones, but I'm so excited to dig into Turkish wine and how you began working with Turkish wine and just a little bit of your background and everything. So we'll get into all of that, but first, just a big warm welcome to you.
Well, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be on, and I love doing podcasts with other wine people because you just never know where the conversation is going to go.
Oh yeah, we all nerd out on it, and it's great. And wine is so fun, despite so much. I don't know. There's so much going on right now. Actually, this is something we can also talk about, but especially in the United States and in the California wine industry, especially, it's suffering right now. Let's just call a spade, and there's a lot going on in terms of health culture around drinking and things in general, affordability, younger generations and kind of like being a little wine adverse or not as curious or so. And I there's so much, I hear, Gen Z especially. I'm like a younger millennial, so I guess you could say like millennials, especially Gen Z though, are maybe kind of curious about wine, but they're really into transparency and knowing what is in their food and drink, which is like amazing. Good. We all we probably should. But it's definitely it's affecting the industry. So it's a really interesting time to be in the wine industry for sure. Would you say you feel the same way kind of, or
Oh
what's
yeah,
your
100%.
yeah.
Excuse me. It's a really interesting conversation globally about this
Yeah.
transparency and what's going into your wine, and it's makes it even more interesting here in Turkey because,
Mm,
unlike Europe or the US with appellations, AVAs, any one of those systems, we don't have those here.
okay.
So, and there's very little that is required to be put on the label, which actually I think is the same in the US. There are really only a few
Yeah.
pieces of information that are actually required, right?
Yep.
But I think the nice thing about the US system is that, yeah, maybe they don't have all of the information on the label, but quite often, especially responsible wineries have websites, and you can look on their website for more
Yeah.
detailed information about, what went into their farming practices or what went into their wine or, whatever that is.
Their sustainability. They're really shouting that from the rooftops now because they
Exactly,
know people like
exactly.
really care. Yeah.
But we don't have that luxury in Turkey because advertising alcohol is illegal here. And that extends to having websites. So like some wineries might have a website, and
Right.
then they might talk a little bit about their farming or their family history or something like that, but actually showing pictures of the wine or talking about the wine is illegal.
No
So
kidding.
yeah, so we don't get a lot of that, oh, it's not on the label. I can just look on the website for, the winemaking information. We don't
Yeah.
have that luxury here. So there's a lot of trust that goes into drinking here.
Oh my God, no kidding. Wow. Is that I don't know how to really properly word this. Is that like a governmental thing? Is that more like culture,
No,
religion-y for
that's a
you or
governmental
like
thing. It's a
okay.
law that went into effect in 2013. And it
Wow.
extends to all alcohol. It's not just wine, it's all
Sure.
alcohol. Um,
Okay.
but
That is
yeah.
fascinating. Okay. Well, now I'm, like, jumping ten feet ahead here because 'cause I'm so interested, and that is I didn't know any of that, so that is so intriguing to me. But I wanna just step back a little bit and just ask you, like, how you even got into this industry. I think you are
Yeah.
originally from did you was it Michigan? Do I have that
Yes.
correct? Yeah,
Yes.
so just talk to us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you made it to Turkey, of all places.
Yeah. So before I moved to Turkey, I was in Washington, D.C. for quite a long time,
Okay.
working in international development, mostly in the Balkans and a little bit the Middle East, in
Wow.
media sustainability. So nothing to do with wine. I had no career based on wine at all. I drank wine. I mean, especially living in the DC area because we have Virginia so close, Maryland.
Yeah,
So
I love that
I
area.
really enjoyed doing that and getting to know a lot of the Virginia wineries, especially, but really kind of as long as it wasn't Merlot or Chardonnay, I didn't really care. I
Yeah.
mean, I cared whether or not I liked it,
Yeah.
clearly.
It had to at least taste palatable.
Exactly, but, like, I wasn't looking into it, I wasn't trying to find out about who the winemaker was or, what their background I wasn't doing any of
Yeah,
that.
which
And
most
then
people don't,
well,
yeah.
yeah, no, it was fair enough, but, these days, as long as they're buying it, I'm happy.
Right.
Um, and then I moved to Turkey for work, for, international development, was supposed to be a short-term placement, but I did not enjoy DC and was not
Mm,
planning to go back. So I stayed and bounced around with a couple different careers for a while. But in the meantime, so sorry, backing up now myself, I moved here in the beginning of 2013.
okay.
And it was still kind of in that maybe the mid time when, everybody had a blog back then. It didn't
Yeah.
matter if two people read it, everyone had a blog back then.
Yeah.
And my roommate and I like shared a blog because we both traveled a lot for work. So we just wrote
Okay.
about our travels. And then I moved here
That's
and
so
was
cool.
kind of writing about acclimatizing myself to living here and my travels around the country. And one day someone suggested, well, why don't you start writing about Turkish wine on your blog? And I did. And that was kind of the end of, or the beginning, or the beginning of the end. Or
Yeah. Exactly, it was like the end of one thing, the beginning of something else beautiful and
yes.
so
And
fun.
I got here and there was just like so many grapes that I'd never heard of.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew Turkey made wine, but I was
Yep.
shocked by the breadth of it. And
Mhm.
then the more I learned about the Turkish grapes, the more I got interested in wine generally and started studying and taking certifications. And now I like to say that I've drunk myself into a corner of being a Turkish wine specialist.
I love that. There probably aren't many of you, I'd imagine, like, I mean
There are a fair amount locally.
sure, exactly, right.
There are a few of us internationals who live here and specialize in it because I mean,
Mhm.
frankly, it's geography. What else are we going to specialize in if we live here?
Right. Fair.
But yeah, globally, there are very small handful.
Yeah. Yeah. So, talk to me so your blog, can you talk to us a
Mhm.
little bit about that? I love the name, first of all, but I want you to introduce it and talk about it.
So when I switched to doing only wine, I stopped posting on the old blog that I shared with my roommate and started a new blog called The Corky Cork, which is
Mhm.
probably the worst name to give a blog when you're in a foreign country because people have a really hard time saying corky.
And all the
Um,
cues, it's
the
hard for us
cues
native
and yeah, don't
speakers to
don't know what
even
it
say.
means and yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
I
that's
I
funny.
started it well, I came up with the name for a couple different reasons. One, because in the back of my mind, I'd always kind of thought maybe I would move back to the US at some point and open
Right.
my own wine bar, and I wanted to specialize in countries or even US states that were less well known. So,
Yeah.
wine that was quirky, but also
Mhm.
I'm a little bit of an oddball and my cats are just insane. So it just all kind of worked together.
It's this beautiful amalgamation of all the quirk.
Yes, absolutely. And so I write primarily about Turkish wine,
Mhm.
but I also cover other wines, mostly kind of like neighboring countries, which I feel
Sure.
are
Makes
countries
sense.
that are also underlooked and, need a
Yeah.
little love.
Yeah. Yeah. What other countries? I'm so curious now.
I have a big focus on Greece, which
Oh,
is,
yeah.
far and away more popular already globally than
Yeah.
Turkey. But I have very good friends in Athens, so I'm privileged to be able to go
Nice.
back and forth quite frequently and have really got to know Greek wine very well. But
Mhm.
also Hungarian wine is a big passion. So whenever
Ooh,
I get a
yeah.
chance, I'm there. I'm drinking that. I've fallen in love a little bit with Bulgarian wine as well. They have some very
Never
interesting
had
grapes, some very
that.
interesting wine. Um, and I mean, obviously Georgia's right there, but Georgia's already quite popular. They don't need my PR.
Oh, what is it? What's the expression? All, not PR, but like all news is good news or whatever,
Right. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
all exposure is good exposure. That is so awesome. So when you are so you travel for work as well, right? Or are you kind
Uh,
of mostly just based in
I'm mostly just based here.
Okay,
So I travel for, let's say, wine education more than
got it,
anything
okay.
now.
Yeah. I'm so curious, when you travel and, like, so what are you can you, like, kind of walk us through, like, when you're traveling for work, so to speak, and,
Mhm.
and that sort of education, are you going to wineries over there? Are you going to kind of more major cities, but then going to, I guess, what, wine bars or something over there?
Mhm.
Like, what does that sort of, look like for you? And I'm also living so vicariously through you as I ask that question because that just sounds fabulous.
It's a combination for me. It really depends on where I'm going and
Mhm.
if I'm meeting anyone. Because so I mean, yeah, I'm from Michigan and we don't have public transportation where I grew up. So yeah, I know
Right.
how to drive, or at least the state of Michigan issued me a driver's license. How wisely that was or not, I don't know.
Oh my
Um,
god.
I detest driving, though. I absolutely hate driving, especially in a foreign country. And if I have
Yes,
to
it's a lot,
juggle
yeah.
driving in a foreign country, doing my own navigation, and then
Oh my god.
wine tasting, I
Yes.
all by myself. So no. So like I
Fair.
might get brave and rent a vehicle or something if I have one or two friends with me to um kind of at least share in the navigation.
Yeah,
Um
feel a co-pilot.
Yes, exactly,
Your
something
passenger,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Otherwise, I focus on the big cities, and before I go, I hunt up every wine bar that I can find on Google Maps. I read the reviews, I look for pictures to see kind of what the vibe is, because I think you can tell a lot about a wine bar by the pictures.
oh yeah.
Um, and then particularly if there's any, like a list of a wine bar, or sorry, like a list of a wine list, a
Mhm.
picture of a wine list. That's what I was going for.
That makes sense. I got what you're saying.
Um, and then if it's a city I've never been to and I want to also combine some tourism, then I just
Yeah,
try to mix and match throughout the day. But depending on where you go also dictates how much you can, or rather how early in your day you can dive into those wine
sure.
bars. Like Greece, as much as I love Greece and I love Athens, they are monsters because they don't open their bars until like 5 or 6 p.m. And I'm like, but I want to drink
That's
before that.
cruel.
It's cruel,
How dare
right?
they? Meanwhile, tasting rooms and stuff are open here at like 10:30 AM.
I'm all for that. I am
Yeah.
100% all for that. Um,
Oh my
so
gosh.
yeah, it's a little bit of both. And then I also read up as much as I can on what native grapes they might have.
Mhm.
Every country has their own native grapes. So I try to read as much as I can about what those are. And I usually look specifically for the native grapes of that country,
Yeah,
uh, and what their wine regions might be like, what their climate might be like, all of that pre-study, if you will, and then I get to
yeah.
do the more fun study when I'm
Fun
there
part,
of
yeah.
yeah, the drinking and talking to people.
Yeah, definitely. Is there, like, 1 or 2 experiences that have really stood out to you so far in your travels? Either and this could be anything, it could be, a particular wine that surprised
Mhm.
you or, a person that you were just speaking with, right, kinda making these connections or something. Is there, like, 1 experience in particular that really just kinda stands out to you?
Recently, I think was last summer I went to Sofia in Bulgaria. And
Mm.
I'd been to Bulgaria before, but never to Sofia, so I was really excited to check it out. And I'd had pre-recommendations of a few wine bars. One place I went had a pet nat made out of a native grape.
Oh, yeah. Love
And
Patna.
so, I mean, I'm sucker for anything with bubbles,
Yeah.
but this was in a can. And I know
Okay.
that's becoming a little bit more common in the US and elsewhere, but we don't have anything like that in Turkey.
No, and in
And
Bulgaria, of all
I
places.
right? And I've always felt very much like, ugh, wine in a can, like you can't do
Yeah.
that. It's in a can. Like just no, that can't be
Sacrilege.
quality, right? Exactly. It's
Yeah.
a sacrilege. But I tried it because I was like, well, hey, I'm here. This is a native grape. It's bubbles. How bad can it be? And not only was it not bad, it was fantastic. It was so
Wow.
delicious. And I was really surprised. But for one thing, like the can was I was expecting like a Coca-Cola can. But
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
it's very it's a different kind of aluminum material.
Like, higher quality
Um,
feeling, kind of?
I don't know if it's higher quality feelings. It was more flexible. It didn't have quite like
Oh, interesting.
the metallic hardness of a
Okay.
soda can.
Right.
Um, and it also had I think this was just the label, but it actually kind of doubled as like a cooling jacket, like a on the
That is
outside. It was like a
fascinating.
shade textured kind of a something.
Okay.
Um, and also, but I mean, sure, a can for a pet nat. Why not? Because right, meant to be drunk young. It's bubbly, which
Makes
we
sense.
already put
Yeah.
bubbly things in cans, and
Oh, yeah.
uh, yeah, it was just so surprising on so many levels to me that
Yeah.
that one really blew my mind.
That's really cool, and so probably sounds delicious. There's a couple, brands out here that I work with that do a pet nut, and it's not super common, from at least around here, but
Mhm.
it's really different and unique, and it's, like, great for, we're getting into summer months now, so it's, like,
Absolutely.
so delicious, but yeah, that's so interesting. I was curious, just and this is either within your work noticing this
Mhm.
or just within your travels. What does, like, wine tourism look like? Either you can just touch on Europe in general or Turkey specifically, however you wanna answer that question, but I was just so curious kind of what the classic, like, like I said, wine tourism looks like there. So
Mhm.
obviously here, big on wineries. It's like it's freaking Disneyland over here in like Napa and Sonoma. Um, Disneyland for adults, so to speak. And but it's funny when John and I very briefly lived in Siena. So we were working, or he really, I was teaching English online, go figure. Were at this winery outside of Siena. He never hosted Italians ever, right? It was
Huh.
always either Americans or people from the UK or
Mhm.
other countries because Italians really didn't go wine tasting
That's so
like
interesting.
we would maybe do here. So I was just curious, do you notice like Turkish people wine tasting? Like, are there traditional like wineries out there like it would equate to here, or what have you seen
Yeah,
out there?
here
I was
it's
so curious.
interesting because the majority of wine tourism in Turkey is local. It is the Turks.
Okay,
Some
interesting.
of which might have to do with we're still trying to get tourists to understand that there is wine tourism here because this is
Yeah.
definitely not the number one country. Like, oh, I'm going to Turkey.
Mhm.
I'm going to see if there's wine tourism or if there's a wine activity I can do. That is not at the
The
top of
first thing
everybody's
that
mind
comes to
yet.
mind. Yeah, fair enough.
Really, really trying to fix that one.
Yeah.
But also because doing it through an agency, I mean, if you're not me, or maybe if you're with a group and you're brave and you want to rent a car and drive around Turkey by yourself, then I mean, it's very doable.
Mhm.
Um, then prices can be lower. But if
Yeah.
you book through an agency, we've gotten the one of the tour companies that I work with that specializes in wine tourism here. We've had some comments from people who wanted to book wine tours that, oh, that's so expensive. I can do it more, cheaper in Europe.
Mm.
And we're like, yeah, you can. This is an
Yeah.
expensive country.
Yeah.
The inflation here over the last few years has been really debilitating on every level of life. But
Really?
for wine, which is already much more expensive here than average for the
Like Europe.
region.
Okay.
Yes. And then you throw in like our petrol prices have gone up. And if you're doing a tour, you are legally obligated to have a licensed Turkish tour guide with you. And then if you want to
Wow.
throw in a wine specialist, like me or one of my other colleagues, you have to throw our costs on top of it because none of
Oh
us are
my
licensed
gosh.
guides because of regulations that say that we can't be.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it's so it can be very, very expensive to book wine tourism here. But for
Yeah.
locals, um, it's nothing to, hop in the car and drive to the nearest winery, particularly if you live closer to any one of the wine regions.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
so
And kinda
yeah,
like
here
live out
it's
a little bit.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Would you say a lot of the like the wineries or whatnot are kind of out a little bit? And I'm not gonna say the middle of nowhere, but like and then like what's kind of the how do I want to ask this? Basically, are there a lot of them or is it kind of sporadic or
Mhm.
do you feel like it's growing or is it kind of is where it is right now? Like kind of where do you see it now and sort of is wine tourism sort of growing there or is it kind of staying a little stagnant, would you say?
So for the most part, started from the beginning. For the most part, yes, wineries are quite a bit outside of the big cities. The
Mhm.
one exception would be Izmir in the Aegean region, and I'll address that a few questions down the list. But like for example, the closest winery to Istanbul is an hour and a half drive, depending on traffic.
Sure. Okay.
And then I think she's at least another half an hour away from the next closest winery, and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
Um, so you can theoretically you can do a day tour out of Istanbul, hit 2 to 3 wineries, depending on how much you keep to the schedule that you have, which
Right.
you have to have a very flexible schedule when dealing with Turkish people. There's
Mhm.
time management issues. Uh, outside of this area, the majority of wineries we have are concentrated in our Aegean region,
Okay.
which I mean, it's the most conducive climate, I suppose. It's a
Yeah.
Mediterranean climate.
It's
Um,
gorgeous.
it's easy to grow just about everything, and
Mhm.
which so maybe it's not the best place for grapes, and I have some commentary on that. But so a lot of wineries are focused in the Aegean region, and therefore you can get to quite a few of them within easy reach of the big city of Izmir.
Okay.
Um, Wine tourism largely, I think it's growing here, at least again on the domestic side. So one of the things
Mhm.
wineries are doing here, because again, aside from the Aegean, where there are a few clusters here and there of a lot of wineries together,
Mhm.
most of the wineries are, yeah, minimum a half an hour, sometimes an hour away from the next winery. One of my favorite wineries is 3 hours from the big city.
Oh my gosh.
I know, and then an hour away from the nearest hotels. But so
Wow.
one of the things that the wineries here are doing is they're building hotels, they're building guest rooms. They're
Oh my
trying to
gosh.
make it more conducive and easier for people to come and visit.
Got it.
So a lot of them started by adding restaurants, and then some of them started adding hotels. But one of the great things about wine tourism in Turkey, particularly if you're coming here as a tourist, is there's so much old stuff in Turkey. So much old
Mhm.
stuff here. Because there's so much old stuff here, it's like literally everywhere. And because
Yeah.
wineries kind of, even if the concentration isn't huge, wineries also cover the country, like all the regions of the country. So it is
Yeah.
so easy to combine traditional tourism with wine tourism because there's always an old thing nearby to go look
Yeah.
at. And
Right.
particularly if you're going to see some of the more out of the way wineries,
Mhm.
it's delightful because the old thing that you go see is not on the top 10 list of what all of the other tourists are going to see. So there's a lot more sustainability really involved in wine tours in Turkey because you're not going to the over touristed places. which also
Yep.
means that you're paying lower entrance fees for
Mhm.
some of these places because museum ticket prices here are very high.
Wow.
Um, and you also get much better pictures of whatever it is you're seeing because there's not like a million tourists milling around in your shot.
Yes, really. It's kinda more j off the beaten path sorta stuff, and, like, I get it if you're going to Turkey for the first time, it's I'm not gonna compare it to, like, going to, like, Rome or Florence or something like that, but, I know so many people
But it is
or
that,
several
yeah.
yeah, several people that would ask us, "I'm going to Italy for the first time, where should I go?" Of course, you're gonna wanna see some of the
Yes.
the Colosseum and, there's some things that's like, "Okay, gotta kinda see it." But that's what John and I love too is exploring off the beaten path, not seeing the things that every other person sees, and if you get some good wine out of it, I mean
Absolutely, absolutely, and
Yeah,
that's one of the best things about, for me, visiting the Turkish wineries is it's not just, drinking the wine, which is often quite delicious, but,
yeah.
um, Turkish hospitality is a real thing,
Ooh,
particularly when you go to smaller family-run wineries,
uh-huh.
even the ones that are less geared towards tourism. There is such a welcoming when you arrive, particularly as a foreigner, because some of these smaller wineries are like, you've heard of us and you want to
Yeah.
you want to come visit, like, wow, yes, please come, like, we're not actually set up to
Aw.
receive tourists, but yes, come. And then suddenly you're having lunch at the family home or something like that, and
Aw.
it's a real, like, embracing of visitors, but also a really interesting way to experience Turkish culture.
Yeah. Again, just that more unique, like, something it's those little, like I keep saying off the beaten path because I don't have a better word for it, but just those
But
unique
yes,
moments that you would never have if you didn't kinda, like, get out of the box a little bit and be open to that and
yes,
exploring that. I love that so much, and I
yes.
those are the things that I feel like, of course, you always look back on trips and stuff, and even if you do the touristy things, but I think that's just, like, so unique and so special.
No,
When
100%.
you go on these, like, kind of wine excursions and these
Mhm.
trips, and so you said well, remind me, what was your role in that as well? So it sounds like there has to be, like, a licensed, actual, like, Turkish remind me what it was again?
A Turkish tour guide. Is a tour guide
Tour
is a
okay,
protected, class of work in Turkey, and you have
okay.
to be licensed in order to do it, which actually as a tourist is a nice thing to know because it means all
I
those people standing around asking, "Do you want a tour guide? Do you want a tour guide?" These are, like,
yeah,
legitimate people who have passed some very difficult tests. So
right.
they really know what they're talking
I know what
about.
they're
It's
talking
not
about.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so then when you go on these tours, what is your role in that? I'm so I
Mhm.
like it sounds just so great. Are you actually like hosting the tastings or what does that part of your work look like?
I do a little bit of both. It really kind of depends on where we're going and which winery it is because
Okay, right.
not all the wineries yet have English speaking staff. A lot of them do
Mhm.
now, but not all of them do, particularly when you go to those really small, out of the way ones. There might not be anybody
Sure.
there who speaks English. And in
Yeah.
that case, I kind of double as a interpreter, tasting host kind of person.
Right.
Sometimes I'm just there to talk about Turkish wine generally, like on the trip, on the hour and a half drive outside of Istanbul, like you got to fill that somehow. And
Yeah.
so I try to give a little bit of information about the history of Turkey, of Turkish wine, what the native grapes are like, what the native grapes of the region where they're going is, if they're so some people are interested, some people aren't. So for the people who are interested, I want to tell them about what the microclimates are and what makes the
Mhm.
soil structures here special. And so it really kind of depends on who who the tour is for,
Yeah.
um, and exactly what they want to get out of the situation.
Totally. That makes a lot of sense, and I'm smiling and kinda laughing to myself because John, who works in hospitality day in and day out, experiences that all the time in a different way. People that are clearly actually, he works at a winery here that also has a lot of art, and so some
Mm,
people come literally just for the art, and he was like,
wow.
"Well, that was a wash," because they weren't barely even interested in the wine. They had, like, the wine in their glass, but they could have cared less.
Mhm.
Some people kinda come to drink, but, then there's a lot of people that, just wanna be amongst friends, and it's like he can go on, but it's like, you can read the room, when
Yeah.
people are kind of not or they're on the totally opposite end of the spectrum and they wanna nerd out and they're fascinated by it all
Yeah.
and, which is where we would probably be if we were in Turkey. Um, and it's great. That sounds so cool. What is it that you found that you love most about Turkish wine? This is a very broad question, but is there something that just clearly, you're drawn to
Yeah.
it, but, what is it specifically for you that makes it, so good and so special?
It's actually a couple of things. One is the native grapes in Turkey. Turkey has more grapes than any other country. There are over 1,400
Wow.
grapes here. Yes.
Oh my god.
Yes. Less than 100 of them are currently being used in wine production, but native, like kind of bringing back the native grapes has become very, I say trendy, but I don't mean
Mm,
trendy as like a temporal bad kind of thing. It's become
mhm.
popular, trendy, I guess, to over the
Yeah.
last 10, 15 years to kind of reinvigorate some of these older vines and track down lost vineyards and introduce some of these
Wow.
old forgotten grapes back onto the market. So it's been a really fascinating time to become part of the Turkish wine industry. And then on top of that, it's the wineries, it's the people behind the wine, the
Mhm.
stories. Especially here, they have so much working against them.
Mm.
The government climate is not friendly towards alcohol production. Uh,
There's so many regulations, it sounds like.
so with so many regulations, the expense is enormous for them, and then
Mm.
which unfortunately gets transferred to us as drinkers. But the
Yeah.
just the cost of running a winery here is
It's
it's
astronomical
it
probably.
is, it
It's
really is
expensive here
astronomical.
too, but yeah, for them, I bet it sounds like worse, honestly, in a lot of ways.
I think in a lot of ways it probably is. And then, I mean, the fact that
Yeah.
they go through, I mean, there are 4 or 5 different arms of the government that could at any point turn up to inspect your winery. And if,
Wow.
like not everything is completely perfect, then, all that hard work you put into it, all that money could go away if they decide to shut you down. So like
The
the
labor of love.
it is absolutely a labor of love. So, I mean, yeah, there are still some, big factory size wineries here that are doing it for the money, but a lot of these smaller wineries, which are also the ones like really trying to rescue these old grapes as well, because they're
Mhm.
doing it for the love because they don't want to lose the connection with the culture and with the incredible winemaking history that Turkey has. So
Yeah.
it's really inspiring.
Oh, that's so great to watch. I love that so much. There's, a lot of wineries here have been bought out. A lot of big companies come in and are scooping up a lot of smaller family-owned places because they can't really afford to operate here, or that's really quite devastating to watch in a lot of cases. But there are still those ones, and we saw this a lot in Italy too, that are really just so humble, humble
Mhm.
beginnings, humble operations now that it's generational, and
Mhm.
I just love and appreciate that so much because I mean, the dedication, and then just farming in general, like just farmers
Yeah.
across the board, but just knowing, especially us working in the wine industry, knowing the work, the early mornings, I mean, just the
So hot.
harvest,
Yes.
everything that goes into it. It's exhausting. I worked one day of a harvest in Siena, and I was like, "Never again." But it was so, like, I say this with love, it was so antiquated, the process. It was like, not what we were kinda used to here in California, and I was like, "This is unreal. This is like we're back like 100 years right now."
Yeah.
And, so we're spoiled out here, but, it was humbling in the most beautiful way, for sure.
I've only
I
worked in
wanted
Instagram harvest before, and I don't think I want to do anything beyond that. Like I've got the shears and
yeah,
like the nice pictures, and that was
yeah,
that
yeah.
was enough for me.
That was good enough for you, yeah. So fair. It's tough out there, man, and they go so fast. I can't even okay, that's another conversation for another day.
Yeah.
I wanted to quickly, as we kinda slowly start to wrap up, I wanted to come back to your comment that you made earlier about, it was like the Aegean Sea, like,
Mm.
growing of grapes and v what I'm so curious now, what went through your mind when you it sounded so juicy, I'm like, "We have to revisit this really quick."
Oh, okay. So there are, I think now 6 official kind of wine routes in Turkey.
Okay.
The one that is the most well put together,
Mhm.
uh, the easiest to navigate, particularly as a tourist, is in a city called Urla, which is it's about 40 minutes south of Izmir, which is the biggest city in the Aegean region.
Okay.
So easy to navigate these wineries. For one thing, most of them are really close together. There's signage to direct you around, very easy.
Mhm.
It's a Mediterranean climate. It's low
Mhm.
lying. It's hot, and they will almost all of them insist on producing Cabernet Sauvignon. And
Well, that
Cabernet
doesn't
Sauvignon, it's no
the math does
Cabernet
not math
Sauvignon.
on that. Even I
Thank
know
you.
that.
Thank you. So, for one thing, there's a dearth of
What?
native grapes down there. Like very few, like a handful of wineries might have one or two native grapes on their lineup, but aside from that, it is heavy Cabernet country, and that's exactly what it is. It's heavy Cabernet. It's highly
Yeah.
alcoholic, it's flabby, it's a little bit overly oaked. It's
Oh my
actually kind of
god.
like California, 20, 25 years
This is
ago.
sounding very yeah.
So when people say, I want to do a wine tour myself, where should I go? I'm going to be in Izmir
Uh,
anyway, doing like Ephesus, doing this, doing that. Like, what about Urla? Because it's so well advertised. So people know it.
mm,
Even tourists know about the Urla wine route.
okay.
Um, and I was like, look, yes, it's easy to do. The wineries are close together. So, 100%
Oh, that
dip your toes in
convenience.
the industry. But I'm like, go to make sure you stop at these couple few wineries, try
Yeah.
these specific wines if you can. Um, Otherwise, I find it all that Cabernet very frustrating.
Yeah. That uh, the math
Ugh,
is not mathing on
it
that.
just, no, it does not.
Do they do that because they know people are looking for that, and is it, like, catering to tourists a little bit, or what's
Actually,
the
the local palate is very heavy
Oh, okay,
red leaning, which
okay,
has a little bit of a historical grounding. But yes, yeah. So
interesting.
people think that they want highly alcoholic, heavily oaked Cabernets or Bordeaux blend kind of
Sounds like
wines,
Napa.
and
Oh my god.
yes, well, yes. And then there are a few wineries kind
Oh,
of fighting against this, trying to introduce the new grapes and new styles and be like, no, you actually want lighter wine with native grapes because it goes
right.
better with the food and with the climate. And
Like, why fight against that? Oh
I,
my gosh, that's like there's a reason it goes so well. There's a reason that certain grapes are grown well in a certain
yeah,
terroir and environment and stuff.
yeah.
Why fight it? Oh my god. Oh, the drama going on in Turkey. Like, who knew, man? That is wild. Okay, so one of my last questions for you, and then I wanna talk about your books here really quick,
Okay.
just to kinda close out, but, I was so curious now that we've talked all about Turkish wine, do you
Mhm.
have a particular favorite or, like, a favorite variety out of all of them? Out of all 1,000 whatever
Yeah,
it
in
was?
Turkey. So, I do.
There's just such a few to choose from.
For so I mean, if I get to choose one for white and one for red,
Yes, yeah, let's
my
go.
favorite white is it's called Emir. It is the grape of Cappadocia, which is the second most
Oh,
touristed
yeah.
place in all of Turkey.
Yeah, gorgeous.
It's
All I think of is
I
balloons,
well, exactly. Well, yeah, because it's beautiful, and
unfortunately.
you go do the balloons, and um, I love it.
That's amazing.
It's moderate alcohol, high acidity, lots of green
Mhm.
fruits, and it's got a little bit of a mineral salty edge to it because this is like major
Ooh,
volcanic and high elevation and volcanic soils. So it's really
yeah.
fascinating wines. And
Mhm.
on the red side is a grape called Karasokas, which comes from
Ooh.
more the Aegean area, actually.
Uh-huh.
It's a in some ways it's a little bit like Nebbiolo or Xinomavro in that it's a very
Ooh,
pale colored wine,
okay.
which is very deceptive because it is just a huge
Powerful.
personality, very powerful, lots of fruit, lots of spice, lots of black pepper, and
Mm. That sounds delicious.
it's such a perfect wine. I love it so much. And people here are using it for reds, for rosés. We've even got one producer who does a red pet nat with it, which is fascinating.
Oh, that's probably so interesting.
It is very interesting. I mean, I would
Wow.
liken it a little bit to kind of like a properly dry Lambrusco. Like,
Okay. Yeah.
it's fantastic.
Ooh. Oh my gosh, I'll have to try these or look for them here, God willing. They're here somewhere. We don't see a lot of Turkish wine, but also, just in like our general grocery stores, I mean,
There
my
are a few
God, maybe
specialty
there's
shops in
uh,
California that definitely carry them.
that's
A
I was gonna
few
say we're gonna have
here
to
and
look.
there.
Yeah.
The number one Turkish wine importer is in Houston.
Okay.
Unfortunately, at the moment, he's only selling within Texas, but will hopefully
Ugh,
figure out his paperwork to start shipping out of state
yeah.
soon.
Get it to California, man.
Oh,
I listen, I
yeah,
love
that's what we keep
California wine, but
saying.
I love some variety. So, and we do that. We had oh my God, it was a Syrah, but where was it from? It was like Moroccan or
Oh,
something. It was
those are
like my first
interesting.
maybe I don't
Yeah.
know if it was a Syrah, but anyway, that was really interesting. So I'm like, want to branch out, like,
Hmm.
but you got me intrigued with both of those. So I love it. So let's just quickly talk about your books. I'm so curious to see how these kind of came to you. I'm actually not surprised at all that you wrote these with your writing background and just your love of all Turkish wine. But so you have a book called The Essential Guide to Turkish Wine,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Can you talk to me about that? And then you have another one coming. So I want to let you speak to both of those.
Thank you. Yeah, the Essential Guide to Turkish Wine, actually, edition two will hopefully be out within the next month or two, probably two,
Nice.
the way things are going. Um, Honestly, how did this start? I was actually in the process of trying to figure out how to move to Italy to study wine. This was an embarrassingly long time ago at this point. And I went somewhere on holiday, visited a few wineries while I was there, and at one of the wineries, they had like the wines of wherever I was
Right.
book. And I bought it, thought it was a nice souvenir, and got it back here and started thinking, Turkey is such
I
a
could do
big
that.
tourism country and there's so much good food here and all the wine. Why is there not a Wines of Turkey book? And I kind of sat
Yeah.
around thinking that somebody was surely writing this book, but I don't know, 6, 8 months went by and I wasn't hearing any rumors. So I was like, well, I'll do it then.
Okay, I'll do it. I'll take that on. I love it.
So my research partner slash photographer Emma and I spent it took 4 years because we had to go to all of the wineries ourselves and we both had full-time
Oh my
jobs. So we
God.
were like traveling alternate weekends. And again, because of how far apart these things are, sometimes we could only visit two
Yeah.
to three wineries in one trip.
Oof.
Um, it took a really long time to put together, and I ended up self-publishing because couldn't get anyone interested in it because I was told it was too
Huh.
niche of a topic. I'm like, okay.
I
So,
mean, okay, I have thoughts and feelings on that, but okay.
uh-huh. Um,
Publishing's rough.
yeah, it's a hard thing, man. But and I also was very adamant about I wanted it published the way I envisioned. Like I want it to be
Yeah,
a little bit more of a coffee table book, and it was full of photography and infographics that my amazing designer
I love
Başak
that.
created. Because I felt, especially for a country like Turkey, that people are not associating like easily with wine, that I wanted
Right.
the imagery to be right there so that you could see Turkey
Yeah,
and you can see the wine and hopefully it would build a little bit more of an association.
yeah.
And so the book covers, in brief, a little bit of Turkish wine history, modern Turkish culture, native grapes with a bunch of infographics, and then the meat of the book is really the stories behind each of the wineries. I wanted to
So
make sure to
cool.
tell their stories. And then, of course, with like, if you want to visit, here's how to find them kind of information.
Right. Here's how to not go to the same places that every single other person goes.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
but also here's that, I guess, if you want it, but so cool. And then can you quickly
Mm.
talk about, the other book that's going to be released pretty soon?
Yes, the Quick and Dirty Guide to Greek Wine.
Mhm.
So initially, I was supposed to actually be kind of doing a Greek version of my Turkish book,
Okay.
but my Greek partner kind of disappeared on me. And
Ugh,
I mean, I don't live there, and flying back and forth was not really
that's
going to be
tough to do on your
possible.
own in general, like, oh my god.
Also, I mean, we have less than 200 wineries in Turkey, and Greece has, I don't know, 1,000.
Many more.
That's good. Yes, many more. So I'm like, there's no way I can manage this on my own. So I
Yeah,
kind
of
of
course.
backburnered that, but I still
Mhm.
wanted to do something with all of the research I'd already done. And
Yeah.
I thought to myself, okay, when I go to a country, when I can't visit wineries, when I'm just going to be in the big city, going to wine bars, what do I want to know about the wine? I want to know what the native grapes are, what their
Yep,
profile is, a little bit of the geeky stuff about the climate and everything.
yep.
And I'm a very visual person, so I love the infographics. I love maps, and I want to know who the good producers are, where I
Mhm.
should be drinking in that city, and that's
Mhm.
kind of what I did with this. So this book is I think I took 50, 55 of the Greek grapes. I made the infographics. Again, a little bit about the regions. Who are the major producers in those regions? Who are the major producers of some of those individual grapes? Where you should be drinking and shopping in Athens. And yeah, it's like a little pocket-sized,
Just a little, yeah, little
carry it around
go-to
with you kind of a
guide.
guide. Yeah,
A quick and dirty guide. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's so great. I could see that being for, like, every country. I don't know if you're planning on doing multiple volumes or one for each
Yeah, kind of like
country.
have my eye on the next country.
I could see it. I'm just saying, like, or like Bulgaria, right? Or I don't know, to some of these other countries, maybe even an Italy one, even though I'm sure there's
Yep.
plenty of Italy wine books, but still, like, having that little just easy go-to guide kind of thing, like, I feel like that would be so, yeah, people would be super into that.
Yeah.
That is so awesome. Congrats on both of those.
Thank
That's
you.
a lot of work. Like, I just wanna, again, major kudos to you. That
Thank you
is
so
not easy. That is a
much.
lot of time. That takes a lot of dedication and true, like, love to wine and the craft and everything to compile all of that. So, good for you.
Thank you.
That's awesome. My very last question for you is just
Mhm.
like for listeners here who are maybe either were considering going to Turkey and maybe doing some wine stuff over there, or now really want to go, like me,
Yeah.
um, which I want to do before, but now I'm really like, okay, when are we going? What is maybe just one piece of advice, a piece of guidance, tip, and you can kind of answer this however you want to,
Mhm.
but like in terms of what you would recommend either doing over there, how, like kind of what your do's and don'ts are for, if you're planning a trip to Turkey, particularly if you want to, have a little wine involved.
Everyone involved. Um, oh, that's a big question.
I know.
Um, if it's your first time coming here, yeah, absolutely, you have to see Istanbul. Like we were talking about this before, like you have to see Rome, you have to see New York, but
Hmm.
try to build in a few days to at least do a day trip or an overnight trip outside of Istanbul because yeah,
Yeah.
coming here is very much not necessarily air quote real
Hmm.
Turkey.
Yeah.
Um, really branch outside food wise. There's so much good food here.
Hmm.
Try to like eat outside of the kebab world. I mean, I know that's what so
Yeah.
many people end up eating is the kebabs and the dinners, but there is
Yeah.
so
It's
much more than
easy,
that
but
here.
uh,
And then
yeah.
for wine, I mean, check out, I mean, little plug for me. Check out my website. I've got like a drinking in Istanbul guide to try to direct people towards the really, really good wine bars that are here. But
Oh yeah.
especially with the wine, don't be afraid to drink something that you can't say. A lot
Oh
of
yeah.
Turkish grape names
Makes me wanna drink
are
it more.
a lot of Turkish great names are quite difficult to pronounce.
Yeah, I'm
There
sure.
are a lot of umlauts in Turkish and a lot of
Just
special
point to the menu. I
characters.
want that one.
Yeah, do it. I mean, point at the menu,
Or try at
mispronounce
least,
it.
yeah.
They're gonna understand what you're saying. And the really good
Yeah.
wine bars here, um, they have staff that love wine and
Mhm.
want to help you find a Turkish wine that you will also love. So
Yeah.
just because you're afraid to say it or embarrassed to mispronounce it or something like that, don't let that stop you from trying anything.
I love that. And I think it does stop people sometimes, as
Yeah.
it feels a little intimidating or it's, like, yeah, you can't even anytime that happens to me, I always try and like just not make light of it, but kind of be like, I don't know, yeah,
Well,
how do I pronounce this? And I feel like more times than not, they get it. They're like, oh yeah, yeah, I got you or whatever,
they
like it's
absolutely get it. And
that
the
shared
people here, and
experience.
they'll help you learn how to pronounce it, So it's
Right. Yeah. So gotta make the effort though.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I love that. Great, great advices. So, where that all being said, I always like to end with this too. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you, find out, maybe even go on some sort of tour with you, or just like ask you any questions? Where can they follow you?
Sure.
All the good stuff.
All the good stuff. So my website is thequirkycork.com. I'm on Instagram as Quirky Cork, not the, because somebody had that already.
Somebody took it. Always happens.
Also YouTube as the Quirky Cork. And yeah, you can reach out to me through Instagram, through my website. I mean, I work with a number of different travel agencies on these
Nice.
tours and tastings, but rather than listing all of them, it's probably just easier to reach out to me directly, and then I will send people links if they're interested in booking things.
Amazing. Perfect.
Yeah.
Andrea, thank you so much for your time
Thank
today.
you,
This was such
Paris.
a fun conversation. Covered a lot of ground in terms of Turkish wine and just the general tourism. And I certainly learned a lot today. So I'm really grateful for your time and your love of Turkish wine. This is so fun.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us and tuning into the Taste Toast Travel Podcast. We really appreciate you being here and hope you're enjoying these honest conversations about all things sipping, savoring, and seeing the world. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, we would truly appreciate a rating or review on whatever platform you're tuning in on, so fellow foodies, Epicureans, and travel enthusiasts can enjoy this content too. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a follow at Taste Toast Travel. We'll see you in the next episode.